I discovered my boss was fired, then found millions hidden in checks. I resolved it all before leaving talk about a wild exit. Please excuse the length of this message. This event occurred some time ago, yet it remains vivid in my memory. I graduated from college with a business degree in one hand and no job in the other. As is the case for many graduates, the assurances from alumni regarding job opportunities for new graduates turned out to be completely untrue. Consequently, I needed to begin my career journey from a humble position. I secured a decent job in operations at a firm. I cannot disclose its name without revealing my identity. I had an excellent supervisor who taught me nearly everything I needed to know. The work environment was positive, and the compensation was satisfactory. To provide clarity on how the business operated, it is essential to explain its structure. The corporate headquarters was situated in California, while we were located elsewhere. There were numerous activities taking place within the company, and I cannot elaborate on all of them without detracting from the story. However, let's just say that the sales approach resembled that of Stratton Oakmont. Initially, I worked in operations handling some of the smaller clients. With my supervisor's support, I was able to advance swiftly to oversee all operations and order processing for the firm. We had a significant client responsible for 90% of the company's revenue. The structure involved two categories of sales representatives: telephone sales representatives, TSRs, and customer service representatives, CSRs. The TSRs were the high performers who contacted large corporations and technology firms to extend product warranties, earning substantial commissions. The CSRs focused on the smaller businesses and managed inbound sales calls from individuals interested in renewing warranties. Each representative received unique codes that associated their accounts with the client's files, ensuring that if a renewal occurred automatically, they would earn a commission because it was under their client account. It was a lucrative arrangement. The client hired our company to act as the intermediary for their business-to-business transactions, managing all of their daily client interactions. For every $100 received by our firm, 18%, or $18, would go to the company, while the remainder was sent to the clients upon activating their warranties. Many clients paid via credit card or purchase order with wire transfer, but there were still a significant number of checks that needed processing each week. Shortly after I commenced my role, the checks from clients were to be supervised by one of the sales managers. This did not particularly concern me, as my focus remained on the smaller accounts. Since we operated as a publicly traded company, all the sales orders had to be submitted to operations for fulfillment, as representatives were not permitted to process them independently. At this point, the situation began to deteriorate. My supervisor received temporary access to the financial records as the company was in the process of hiring a new chief financial officer, and he had relevant experience. We went to lunch, as we had done many times previously, but he appeared troubled. When I inquired if anything was amiss, he mentioned that he believed something seemed off concerning our largest client's accounts. He wanted to confirm the situation before he brought it to the attention of upper management. Around the same time, I had been offered the position of compliance officer, which would require me to ensure everything was operating correctly. Soon after, I discovered that my supervisor had been terminated for multiple reasons, all of which I believed to be unfounded because he was well liked not only within the company, but also by our client. Upon logging into my workstation, I noticed that prior to his departure, he had granted me administrative access to his files. It was at this point that things took a turn. Remember those checks sent by clients for warranty renewals? Well, we were cashing them, but apparently, we had not been entering those renewals into the system. This would have triggered a payout to our client, who was entitled to 82% of that revenue. Instead, the checks were being cashed, the funds kept, and the interest generated from the accounts, as banks indeed paid interest in the mid-2000s, was used to offset losses in their collections department. It was astonishing to witness this, and something needed to be done. I devised a plan. First and foremost, I needed to secure a new position, as it would not be a pleasant environment following these events. My former supervisor was aware of other companies eager to hire me. I submitted my resignation, explicitly stating in my exit interview that I could not be a part of the ongoing issues, despite the involvement of human resources. I wanted it documented. Next, I sought approval for overtime for the entire operations team to come in on a Saturday and double their pay. They showed up early on Saturday, initially unhappy about their presence there. However, once I explained that if they completed the task, not only would they receive their overtime pay, but they would also earn significant bonuses, their demeanor improved. They dedicated the entire day to applying those checks dated back years to the client accounts, amounting to millions of dollars. Upon the sales representative's arrival on Monday, they were in complete shock. Not only had they met their weekly goals before even picking up the phones, but they also achieved their monthly and quarterly targets just 2 weeks into the new quarter. Celebration ensued. Joyful shouts, excitement, and happiness filled the air except for sales management. Their enthusiasm morphed into skepticism, then confusion, and finally dread over the course of a couple of hours. They quickly recognized the source of the newfound sales. Not only did the company record these impressive figures, but since more than a day had passed, the client also saw a handsome payday reflected in their system. Naturally, they had questions and announced they would be visiting to congratulate the team on the outstanding numbers. Consequently, management began to scramble, unable to explain how this transpired, particularly with my supervisor's old login credentials still in use. On my last day, I arrived at the office carrying a box to gather my belongings. As I waited for the elevator, a man approached and engaged me in conversation. Noticing my box, he joked about being fired, and I explained that I had received a fantastic opportunity and decided to leave, before things get complicated, which elicited laughter. He was a genuinely nice and down-to-earth individual. He realized we were disembarking at the same floor and inquired whether I worked for X. I confirmed that I did, and when he asked my department, I revealed I was in operations. He then disclosed that he was the CEO of our client. Later, the client arrived, and a significant celebration was held. Afterward, the client expressed interest in obtaining a breakdown of where most of the sales originated, intending to allocate additional funds to that division. Management agreed, but concocted an excuse about being unable to share client payment information due to regulations. As I exited the company, 2 weeks passed before I received a call from a number I did not recognize, which I allowed to go to voicemail. After work, I reviewed the message, discovering it was from the CEO of my former client. He had some issues arise and wanted to speak with me. Naturally, I felt anxious but called him back, and he answered immediately. After some preliminary chat, he asked me directly, "Why did you leave?" I explained that I had received a great opportunity. He was not convinced and remarked that my comment about things getting complicated left a strong impression on him, leading him to believe there was something more at play. After a bit more probing, I advised him to examine the collections department, and that's all I can say. He thanked me, and I ended the call. 2 days later, he terminated the account. Apparently, my former company threatened him with a lawsuit for pulling the account 3 years prematurely. He responded, stating, "That's acceptable because when I present my evidence in court showing you committed fraud," and they proceeded to clean house. All management was dismissed within a day. 1 month later, my friends and I enjoyed a memorable trip to Las Vegas entirely funded by our former client. I am genuinely surprised by the overwhelming responses and positive messages. Thank you all very much. Epilogue: the most significant aspect, which should have been included within the main narrative, is about my former boss. He was an adopted child who treated his adoptive parents wonderfully, while their biological children did not. When his adoptive parents passed away, they left him their entire inheritance. This took place around 2008. He found himself in a peculiar situation. He loved his adoptive parents and was very close to them. Seeking guidance, he went to his church to pray for his parents and pondered what to do with this unexpected fortune. Though he cherished his job, he no longer needed to work. After leaving the church, he stopped at a bar, as many do. Sitting next to him was a developer who, during the 2008 financial crisis, had run out of funds to complete his project due to the unavailability of loans. They conversed, and he thought, "Perhaps this is a sign. To expedite this story, I need to get to work." Ultimately, he decided to invest in the developer's project by purchasing all the houses at the time for remarkably low prices. Today, he lives off the residual income from all of them, which have become rental properties. Life can be disappointing because many individuals engage in unethical behavior and evade consequences. However, it is truly rewarding when good fortune comes to those who deserve it. Story 2. I felt unloved as a child, navigating online dangers for attention, leading to heartbreak and body shame. Now I'm left feeling unworthy. Hello, my name is Andrew, and I am unsure how to begin this. It is likely going to be lengthy, so I doubt anyone will read it, but that is fine. I am essentially writing this to release what has been weighing on my mind. If you choose to read it, I appreciate your time knowing that someone is actually considering my feelings is comforting. So I will just come out and say it. I feel unlovable. My friends dislike when I express this sentiment, but it is the reality. I am simply not meant to be loved. You might perceive me as merely someone who is sad and suffers from low self-esteem, and while that isn't entirely inaccurate, I am more than just that. Let me clarify why I believe I am not meant for love. It all began, naturally, with my parents. They have never truly liked me. I recall being a child and asking them to play with me, always receiving a negative response. It is not that they did not love me, rather they just did not enjoy spending time with me. Once I asked my mother why that was the case, and she responded, "I just am not that type of mother, but I apologize that you are that type of son." Growing up as an emotionally neglected child in the early 2010s was bound to lead me down a particular path. I began conversing with strangers online when I was only 8 years old. Being gay, my interactions were predominantly with men. Now, I recognize that many of those individuals were predators. I am aware that what I did to gain their attention was inappropriate. However, it was the only form of love I was familiar with growing up. At this point, it has become somewhat of an addiction, and like any addiction, it has worsened over time. As I matured, I began to do more and receive less in return. It is amusing once you turn 18, your messages suddenly dwindle to half of what they used to be. I attempted to create adult content numerous times, but always felt too ashamed to maintain the accounts or posts. I have been blackmailed once and threatened several times. And now, here I am, stuck in the same cycle, exacerbating my sadness by receiving even less attention. In real life, I am not perfect either. I began my sexual journey at 16, losing my virginity to a man 20 years older who body shamed me during the experience. He told me he only engaged with me because he wanted to be closer to one of my friends. It is no surprise I have always been friends with the attractive and popular girls. When a guy looks our way, he is interested in her, not me. I once cried in a public restroom, yet I did not stop seeking attention. I figured that if I could no longer capture attention online, perhaps I could achieve it using my physical self. Hookups, attempts at sex work, dating apps, I devoted myself entirely to men who solely wanted fleeting moments of pleasure. I suffered so much from this that I even ended up on an operating table. My body now feels worthless. I am only 19, yet I feel like a patchwork of others' contributions, exhausted, worn out, and unattractive. I have never considered myself beautiful. I have been overweight since the age of 10. My physique resembles that of a football or rugby player, particularly now that I have started working out. I am finally building muscle. Yet, I still do not feel attractive. At 5'6", my body type cannot make me the smaller guy that larger men desire, and I am not the larger guy that smaller men seek. My face does not enhance my situation. People say I am good-looking, but I struggle to believe it. In my view, I can appear hot, even handsome at times, but I will never achieve beauty, let alone pretty. With a physique like mine, I have little chance of flirting or meeting someone in public. What remains in this situation is your personality. Find someone who shares your interests, they say. I don't wish to sound pretentious or overly dramatic, but I am simply too unconventional to find that one person who appreciates me for my uniqueness. I have always been somewhat of a nerd. I possess quirky obsessions with horror, cinema, Five Nights at Freddy's, Doom, Evil Dead, Taylor Swift, sports, cars, and more. They may be interesting in isolation, but their combination does not seem appealing. I could talk for hours about topics that no one else cares about. When the Five Nights at Freddy's movie was finally released, I cried and went to see it in theaters 4 times. Speaking of which, I visit the cinema at least 3 times a month, usually alone. This reflects the nature of my hobbies, great for my enjoyment, but difficult for forming social circles. I engage in solitary interests rather than the kinds that foster friendships. You may wonder, why don't you stop complaining and take action? Don't assume I haven't tried. I came out during middle school. The phrase, "I missed out on adolescent romance because I was in the closet," does not serve as an excuse. The truth is, nobody desired me. I was somewhat popular, but only because I could easily make people laugh, not because I was considered cool or attractive. So I tried to change. I eliminated everything that made me uniquely me. I conformed to be more understandable, more likable, and more desirable. I have played that role, and it was not particularly enjoyable. I recall working diligently to be the ideal boyfriend for those men online who continued to communicate with me for more than a week. I never complained. I was appealing, easy to engage with sexually online, and I induced the right amount of jealousy. They always left because I was considered kind of boring. Yet if I introduce my true personality, I suddenly become bizarre and off-putting. I remember being intimate with one individual whom I thought might genuinely like me. I felt secure enough to be myself, yet he kept interrupting to ask me to stop making certain facial expressions or to check if I was enjoying it. A friend suggested he was merely nervous and wanted to ensure I was comfortable, but I wouldn't be surprised if he just found me frightening or unattractive. Numerous individuals have described me as the perfect candidate for an abusive relationship, and while I understand their reasoning, paradoxically, even those types do not want me. Isn't it ironic? I have spent countless years feeling desperate enough to claim that I would endure anything and accept any circumstances just to be with someone, and yet not even then did they seek me out, nor even the negative aspects. Even those who resort to abusive behavior desire more than I can offer. People often say that love finds you when you least anticipate it, but the issue is that I cannot control my longing for a relationship. I yearn for love, I need it within me. I have never genuinely experienced being loved, and I crave it deeply. Why is it necessary for me to stop caring in order for love to come my way? Is it truly so bad and distasteful to yearn for romance? I suppose it must be. I have always longed for love, which means I will likely never receive it. It is not a matter of having excessively high standards or being selective when it comes to potential partners. I am not unpleasant, reserved, or even unkempt. I am kind, humorous, lively, and generally a pleasant presence at gatherings. I effectively make others laugh. However, that is the extent of it. What's worst is that I can genuinely acknowledge all of this. I understand where my trauma stems from. I recognize that my self-esteem is the root issue. I know I am meant to love myself first, but how am I to achieve that? My mind comprehends what I should do. I have started exercising at the gym. I found a job. I go out occasionally. I have friends. I take pleasure in my hobbies. So why can't my heart resonate with what my mind is advising? I have grown so much. I now realize that embracing myself and appreciating my own worth is far more critical than seeking validation from men. I have become aware that, by my own standards, I am quite intriguing. I enjoy my own company. I appreciate myself for who I am. Yes, I do not love myself, but I do like myself. And I despise that. I resent that my strength in preserving my identity creates a barrier between myself and others. I loathe myself for appreciating my quirky, seemingly pathetic existence. I suppose I simply do not possess what it takes, honestly. I am not meant for that existence. I wish to marry, to fall asleep every night beside the same person, and for him to listen to me and care for me. I want to love him, to cherish him, to prepare meals for him, to buy him gifts, to hear him out, and to gaze at him and think, he is the most stunning man in the world. But I understand that I will never experience that reality. I do not deserve such a life. I have already made too many mistakes to the point of no return. I deserve this estate of misery and loneliness. I merely wish it weren't so excruciating. I am uncertain if anyone will read until the end. But if you ever find yourself feeling like a failure and doubting that love will ever find you, know that it probably will. I assure you, you cannot be worse off than I am. I lack any redeeming qualities. Not a single positive aspect can counterbalance my flaws. You may be attractive, intelligent, fascinating, or adept at something. I am just exhausted. I hope you have a pleasant day, and thank you for taking the time to read this if you have gotten this far.